This afternoon, we're going to be discussing the meninges of the central nervous system. The meninges are three membrane layers that cover and protect your brain and your spinal cord. So in other words, your whole central nervous system. You can see here in the picture, the pia mater is closest to the brain. Here's your brain. Here's the pia mater. Then this light color is a space. Then you have the arachnoid mater, which is this fibrous looking one. And then you have the dura mater, and here's your skull. The arachnoid mater and the pia mater together are called the leptomeninges. There are three spaces within this system also. You've got the epidural space, the subdural space. Your epidural space is between the skull and the dura mater. Between the dura mater and the arachnoid mater is the subdural space. Normally this space is not here. What can happen though is if there's trauma to the brain, it can be opened. The subarachnoid space is located between the pia mater and the arachnid mater. This space provides protection and cushion to your brain by being filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Now let's take a look at the other portion of your central nervous system. So here we have a piece of your cutout of your spinal cord. Here's your spinal cord. Okay, you have your vertebrae, you have your peripheral nerves, you have all three of your layers here. You have the pia mater, you have the epidural space of your spinal cord is located between the dura mater and the bones of the vertebral column. So here's your dural mater. The end of the spinal cord is between your first and second lumbar and the middle center of your back. After that, only cerebrospinal fluid is present. This is where they're going to, if you have to have a spinal tap done, this is where it's going to be performed, where they take the needle and it's really uncomfortable to see, let alone have done. The subarachnoid space in the spinal cord is also filled with cerebrospinal fluid for cushioning and protection. The arachnoid mater is located directly below your dura mater. There's a periosteal and meningeal dura mater. That's the two layers to your dura mater. They're right here. There are no blood vessels or nerves in your arachnoid mater. Arachnoid, meaning spider mater, appearance is fibrous with outcroppings that attach it to the pia mater. If you look at it here, you can see the outcroppings and they're grabbing hold of the pia mater. That's what's going on there. Here the blue is signifying your dura mater, both layers of it, and this would be your skull and this would be your scalp. So between the two layers, the pia mater and the arachnoid mater, is the subarachnoid space, which is filled with cerebrospinal fluid for protecting your brain. So between these two, it's filled with fluid, and that cushions your brain, that if you hit your head and your brain goes sloshing around, there's that fluid in there that it's moving in, and it's not necessarily just dryly colliding with the side of your skull. So there was a study done in the pia mater and what it can do to protect your brain. There was a study done. They found that the more rigid material of the pia mater will protect the brain from severe brain trauma. The material of the pia mater is more rigorous than the brain tissue. The pia mater consists of fibrous connective tissues that have flat cells that repel fluid on the outside, but will allow the blood vessels to pass through the material. With more studies being done on the pia mater, this will allow us for a better computational model to predict what's going to happen in case of a traumatic brain injury. The research was completed using ovine brains for this particular one. If stress is applied to the pia mater, in turn, it's going to respond to protect the brain. The study ran experiments stressing different areas of the cranial pia mater, testing if the viscoelastic characteristics increase with increasing stress. Well, viscoelastic means having a fluid viscosity with the elasticity of a solid or a gel. So it's not really a solid, but it's not really a liquid, but we're talking about that sort of consistency. So what can happen with this is as the stress is increased, they found when they increase the stress, the hyperviscoelastic material in the pia mater is rate dependent. So as the stress goes up, so did the rigidity or viscosity of that particular material to protect your brain. So as they're increasing the stress, so is the protection that the pia mater is giving your brain. Your brain is soft tissue. The pia mater is more firm by nature, which exhibits its ability to protect your brain. The study may contribute to the tension in the pia mater and let us know exactly, if they can continue this study, how much tension it can protect your brain from exactly, and it could lead to more information on traumatic brain injury. So if you look down at our drawing here, we're depicting, here's your brain and your all your meninges, and then it's got all your other stuff that's on the outside of your skull, and they're showing you where your dura mater is, where your brain, here's your ventricle, okay? So what we're talking about here is the pia mater, which is way down here, and that is rate dependent on how much stress is placed on it. So your dura mater is a strong, thick membrane located right under your skull. It contains 2 layers of connective tissue, the periosteal and the meningeal dura mater. One end of the connective tissue attaches to your skull, the other end attaches to your arachnoid mater. When the dura mater folds in on itself, it forms 4 layers of tissue. The dura mater folds in on itself, which forms those 4 thin layers of tissue. They're called the dural reflections. Each hemisphere of your brain is surrounded by a dural reflection. It coats and it separates the brain into its halves, and it keeps it compartmentalized. Now there's serious problems that can occur involving the meninges. We got 2 of them here. There's far more than that, but we'll go with the 2. The first is meningitis. Now we hear about this one first when we're typically teenagers in high school. This is an inflammation of the meninges that's usually brought on by a cerebral spinal fluid infection. So they have a shot for this, a vaccine, as you will, for this particular one. Now, it's important for kids to get that. The second is hematomas. Now, hematomas, there are 2 types, epidural and subdural. An epidural hematoma is between your skull and the dura mater. A subdural hematoma occurs between the arachnoid mater and the dura mater. So one is far more, it's deeper within your skull than the other one. And on our picture here, we see here's an epidural one. Here's a subdural, and then they have a subarachnoid bleed too. So there's different ones that can happen on here. Here are some of your symptoms of meningitis. You could have a fever, you could be tired, you could be light sensitive, so you could be vomiting. So there are different signs and symptoms for meningitis. So as a parent or as a healthcare person, we want to be aware of these particular instances. The hematomas, they, if bad enough, they're going to go into there and they're going to have to drain that blood off the top of the brain. And they're going to have to go in and make a channel to drain that out of there so that it doesn't build up pressure on your brain, because if you put too much pressure on the brain itself, you could be damaging brain tissue. So the hematomas are a very, very important part of knowing what's going on with our brains. At this point, we would take any questions and ask for comments or suggestions. Thank you.